He continues. Nigeria and U.S. strengthen military relations to fight terror. Five female students recently released from abductors get scholarships from First Lady Oluremi Tinubu. NLC and TUC say no plans for industrial action today. And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall review the recently concluded COP28 Climate Summit. The world was in Dubai this December from 150 countries. Over 90,000 people were in the expo city, including Nigeria's 422 delegates who brought home many good things from COP28. Well, before we dwell on Nigeria, the biggest news from the annual United Nations Climate Summit is the global agreement to shift from fossil fuels. You're right, Lianre, but there were many positives for Nigeria. The kicker was the appointment of Tariye Badigeshi as CEO of the Climate Investment Fund, the biggest global climate investment platform. After her appointment, there was a deluge of pledges from high-income countries to the tune of over $3 billion. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, who is also ECOWAS chairman, made a case for the funds to get to the most vulnerable communities in Africa in his usual stance for climate justice, though a supporter of the global energy transition. There were other good things from Dubai. Nigeria signed a performance agreement with Germany for the implementation of the Presidential Power Initiative to improve electricity supply. President Tinubu met investors on potentials in Nigeria's carbon market, unveiling an activation plan, as well as the electric buses rollout plan. That's absolutely true. There were other high-level meetings with global figures at COP28. President Tinubu met British King, talking about King Charles, and President of the UAE. Heads of several government agencies signed agreements with their counterparts in the UAE. For instance, the NNPC sealed deals to commercialize Nigeria's liquefied natural gas for domestic and international markets. There were many developments from COP28. Today, we speak to as many as possible. Welcome to the program. I am Ademola Adeoye. These issues also inform our focus on the review of COP28 Climate Summit. Many thanks for joining us again for Good Morning Nigeria. I am Ian Ray John. And we are transmitting live on the network service of the NTA from our studios here in Abuja. As usual, we will be taking highlights of the morning news in a moment, some business news and newspaper review with Chukwudi Okoli Ugbaja. For now, Dennis Adeguleye takes the news. Hello, Dennis.
Good morning, Ademola and Yenri, and good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. The Minister of State for Defense, Mohammed Bello, says Nigeria will strengthen its military bilateral relations with the US to further enhance the fight against terrorism and other organized and sundry crimes in Nigeria. In a statement by the Director of Press, and Public Relations to the Minister, Henshaw Ugubike. The agreement was reached when Mohammed Bello paid a visit to the U.S. Congresswoman Betty McCollum at the United States Capitol. While highlighting the significance of the existing bilateral ties between Nigeria and the U.S., the minister reaffirmed President Bola Tinubu's commitment to eradicating terrorism through collaborative efforts. And Congresswoman Betty McCollum, who is currently the leader of the U.S. House Committee on Appropriation for Defense, expressed the U.S. commitment to supporting Nigeria in its efforts to combat terrorism and other security threats through intelligence sharing, training, and military hardware production. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tugar, has led a high-level delegation to the 10th high-level seminar on Africa's peace and security in Oman, Algeria. A statement by the SA Media and Communications Strategy to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Al-Qasim Abdulkadir, says this year's seminar has as its theme celebrating 70 years of progress and cooperation, a decade of transformation and innovation, reaching new heights together. The Foreign Affairs Minister also notes that the high-level seminar is an avenue for ongoing efforts to ensure that newly elected African members that assume their seats fully understand Africa's peace and security context, as well as Africa's position on Afrocentric issues on the UN Security Council agenda. The statement adds that Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the 15 member states of the African Union Peace and Security Council are expected to attend, as well as ministers of the current, outgoing, and incoming African members of the United Nations Security Council, except Gabon, which is currently under AU suspension on the grounds of unconstitutional changes of governments. Functional education is the greatest weapon in the fight against terrorism. Nigeria's First Lady, Oluremi Tinubu, stated this while presenting a scholarship grant of 1 million naira each to 5 kidnapped students of the Federal University of Dusima, Katsina State, after their rescue.
Briefed on the courage you have shown so far, and I encourage you to turn this episode in your lives into a story of triumph. By ensuring that you continue to learn, you can rewrite the story of your individual lives and your communities and join in the fight against terrorism.
All thanks to the First Lady, the mother of the nation. We really appreciate her effort. We will never forget this in our life. Education is the best.
The Nigeria Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress have described as fake reports in some media platforms purportedly signed by the General Secretary of the NLC and Secretary General of the TUC, Comrades Emmanuel Ogwaja and Nuhu Toro, to commence strike on Monday, December 18th, 2023 across the country. The labour unions want to reassure Nigerians that this notice did not emanate from them, and neither do they have any intention of initiating any strike action this period, and they advise Nigerians to ignore the fake notice. And President Bola Tinubu celebrates his friend and ally, former President Muhammadu Buhari, an icon of truth, justice and patriotism, on the occasion of his 81st birthday. President Tinubu extols the peerless leadership credentials and feats of the former president, recalling his meritorious service to the nation at various times as head of state and as president. Reeling out former President Buhari's unparalleled records of infrastructural provisions, comprising several new international airports, multiple standard gauge railway lines, new seaport developments, dozens of new dams, power stations, oil and gas infrastructure, expressways and mega bridges, in addition to establishing Nigeria's first ever National Social Investment and Protection Program, among many other feats. President Tinubu fondly recalls the former president's aggressive push to modernize Nigeria's defense architecture while working towards import substitution with the empowerment of millions of Nigerian farmers in his progressive initiative to enhance food security in the country. The president describes former President Buhari as the finest paradigm of sacrifice, devotion, patriotism, and fidelity to the national cause. President Tinubu appreciates former President Buhari for his friendship and vote of confidence shown through his stalwart support for the administration. While wishing the elder statesman longevity and strength, President Tinubu assures the former president that the hope of a prosperous, peaceful and progressive Nigeria, which he has always worked for, will not be dashed. That concludes the news for now. Yenre and Ademola will be back for the rest of the program after this break. Good morning.
Waste collectors seek more processing centers for easy access as recycling business experience a boom. Let's join Alika Kunachirawa for details on business news.
Amid global efforts to tackle climate change and environmental degradation, experts say proper disposal of refuse, especially plastic waste and cans, is necessary. They observed that more plastic recycling factories will reduce cost of transportation and increase profit for collectors.
In some other countries, there are regulations in place to ensure that recycled plastics form a certain percentage, sometimes 25%, sometimes 30% of the whole input into manufacturing of new plastics. This way, this creates a new industry altogether so that the economy expands as it relates to circular economy.
If we're talking about circular economy, it means we must change the business models we use for manufacturing. And if we're going to change those business models, we must look at the entire supply chain from the point where we create value to the point where we deliver, to the point where we capture, to the point where we deliver to customers. So everyone needs to be on board. And in fact, specifically at the grassroots level, because we have such a huge informal sector, a lot of awareness is required to make people understand what it even means to recycle plastics.
They also said failure to formalize waste recycling sector deprives the country an estimated value of 32 million tons of waste generated yearly and complicates environmental pollution. With business news, Alika Opanachi, Arua.
Thank you, Alika, for the business news. Newspaper review is next on Good Morning Nigeria.
Chukudi Okoli-Ugbaja with us for the newspaper review. Good morning, Chukudi.
Good morning, Yere. How are you doing?
Very well, and you?
Good to see you. A bright Monday morning is showing all over you.
Thank
Same
you.
for you?
Yeah, Chooks, how was your weekend?
Great. One day at a time, but I really spent a good weekend.
So that's good.
Arsenal won their match anyway, so why would it not be a good weekend?
Oh,
congratulations.
We are topping the table at the moment.
Chelsea won 2-0.
Oh, those noisemakers.
Okay, let's take a look at what the papers have for us this morning. Looking at the front pages of the dailies that we have. We'll begin with the Blueprint newspaper this morning. And the lead story here says Rivers imbroglio. Amewule led 27 lawmakers there Fubara as crisis deepens. The writers say we dumped PDP because Tinubu is doing well. Call Wike to order. Group urges president. Camp clean on FCT minister. Governor feud. Lukman tells APC. Details on page 18 of the Blueprints. Above that story, we have 2024 surpassed 18.3 trillion naira targeted revenue, Senate task agencies. And above that, just below the masthead, we have drug baron Okenwa loses VGC mansion Jeep to federal government. Federal government, states, local governments share 1.783 trillion naira in November allocation. And just away from that, looking below the picture story, we have terrorists kill 4, abduct scores in Katsina, Zamfara attacks. And finally, from the front page of the Blueprint, we have Kanu no plans to influence Supreme Court's judgment, and that is credited to the APC. All right, looking away from the blueprint now, we'll take a look at the Daily Times newspaper. The lead story here has the kicker: state of education, 168 Zamfara schools shut down over insecurity. 168 Zamfara schools shut down over insecurity. The riders, Ogun Private Poly, running uncredited law, nursing, pharmacy programs, fears over tertiary institution exit from IPPIS affecting funding. Away from that story, below the picture story, we have Rivers Factional Assembly Speaker Amewule lists reasons for defection. And this one is away from that particular story. Here we have Cambridge University announces Nigerian professor as 7th president. Of course, that's big news. And you can find details on page 5 of the Daily Times. Finally, this morning, we have Ohaneze blames Southeast leaders for Kanu's ordeal. Some of the stories you can find in the dailies this morning. Ademola.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. I have Daily Trust with me, and below the nameplate, editorial, what does the World Bank want from Nigeria? Chooks, what do you think they want from Nigeria? The World Bank.
Control. Control, control, control. But the point is this. Nobody is free in the world. Nobody roams wild in any way. You are controlled by circumstance. You're remotely controlled by people whom you don't think are controlling you. So let's not make it sound absurd. But the point is, the kind of control the World Bank wants to foist on us, is it something that is mutually beneficial?
That's the question.
Because you don't get into a partnership and hope that only you would gain. That's crying for the moon. It would never happen. So the World Bank has to ask itself whether it is proffering all the correct solutions to economies. Are there things unique to some countries that the World Bank should remove from the list of its global, global recommendations for economies across the world? That is the point.
Thank you. Now let's move on. Experts unions differ over federal government's plan to restructure TCN. Then below we have the main headline. It's Zamfara community under siege as bandits strike. Zamfara community under siege as bandits strike. Military vehicles, police outpost burnt. 3 persons killed, 16 abducted. State government to hire 4,200 security guards. And in the same line, in the same vein, Afenifere raises alarm over rising kidnappings in Southwest. This spate of insecurity in the country is very, very worrisome.
They're asking you to sleep with one eye open, which is unfortunate.
Both eyes open.
Well, both eyes open, really.
It has always been one eyes. It has been one eyes in the past. Now it's both eyes open.
That would present
Which means
a very
that you're
strange
not
human being.
at all.
Just snoring with your eyes and ears open. Anyhow, military vehicles burnt.
Yeah.
Military vehicles, police outposts burnt. That makes it serious. If you do not have any fear that people who bear arms and maybe are better trained than you to use those arms would confront you, you'd go after their property. That means that these are people who are daring. I hate it when papers call them daredevil gunmen. You don't applaud vice. You don't applaud people who are on a path of criminality. But that best describes them at the moment. Sometimes you think that virtually all of these bandits are on drugs, because the kind of suicidal, adventure they embark upon would simply beat even the imagination of the man you will call the greatest man of valor in the environment. Well, whatever happens, vigilance, vigilance, vigilance. And we want to again stress that citizen vigilance is even more important than security agencies' vigilance. Because you are in millions, they are in thousands.
Yes.
See something, say something. We can all combat this. The other time I said there was this Radio Rivers jingle, FM stereo. I'm a rubber, not be spirit. Now, person like you and me, they bad, they drink yafu, like say, in no care at all. We know the people who are responsible for some of this. The bandits are known by some villagers. But of course, they are afraid that if they put out the word, they could come after them. Repercussions. But that does not stop us from minding. From the fact that it is our lives at stake. It's either we or them. You know?
And then, looking at how these people are equipped, the bandits are equipped these days, and then, like you mentioned, going after security agents and their equipment. I think that it's important for the security agencies that we have in this country to check how they lay off staff, or if you like, some of their personnel, because you are tempted to think that some of these bandits have information about these security agencies, and then they know how they also operate for them to be able to overpower them. So there is need really, when you're laying off security personnel that have been well trained, equipped and all of that, there should be some caution. And for those who are retired,
not only caution, but also monitoring, because that's what is done in other clients.
Yes, and then those who are retired too should be checked. Either probably taken care of, just so that they don't move into crime and all of that. Because the way the bandits are operating these days, it looks like they understand.
You have used what I would call the correct term, the right term, monitoring.
Yes.
If you discharge very highly,
because that's what is done in the other clients. They monitor them.
Forces, they cannot be allowed to live, just move about.
Like
nobody monitors them and all that, because the potential for a vengeance attitude is there. Many of them leave disgruntled, and they show you, hey, two can play at that game.
And even if they don't come out to carry out some of these acts themselves, they train the bandits
and give information as to how to operate. People could permeate or penetrate rather the security infrastructure.
It's a sad situation actually, and that brings us to the issue of community policing as well.
Yes.
If we have community policing, it will be easier for the people living in the community to be able to relate with the personnel, and they'll be able to give, proper information.
Demola, talking about that, do you know that I'm one of the candidates for state police? I'm one of the people who wish state police to be introduced.
Community police.
The fear we express that governors will use them. Our dear Kingsley Son-in-law will say the emperors in the state will convert them to... Yeah, that risk would always be there. But remember, we said, if you grant a private broadcasting licenses, people will burn up this country inside of 24 hours. So glad we made it. Look how far we've come. You see, if you don't try it, you don't find out whether it would work.
Or not.
And it was a military president that gave us private broadcasting eventually. Have they burnt up the place? I think we can try state police and find a way to check the emperors of the states. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's important. Another issue,
because it's a fear of misuse of the policeman by governors.
It is.
That is.
Do they have power to misuse the? Well, I don't know.
No, if you make it state police, they are going to effectively fall under the jurisdiction of the governor of the state.
Yes.
There would of course be some nexus with the center. FBI, U.S. state
just
police,
like
kind of relationship.
Then we have these long queues at cooking gas refill station springing up all over, especially here in Abuja. It's on the front page there.
First of all, thank God I bought just 1 week ago. But that sounds selfish. So what is responsible for the queue?
Well, it's not. It's not stated here.
Maybe you should keep a bag of charcoal. There's this stove they're selling now. I think it's about 12,000 naira. So that if the gas decides not to be part of your household, you could always fall back on the charcoal. Don't laugh. There are many ways Nigerians are surviving now. Even the so-called big men in jeeps, they keep their charcoal pots.
Anyway, thank
but the
you.
problem is this. When we talk charcoal, we are saying, welcome desert. Because we're killing the trees. We're felling the trees to provide the charcoal we're using.
Of
so it's
course,
not good for us.
Not at all.
And
we're talking about COP28 today, so climate issues. So as you're talking,
that's a point.
So,
well, thank you, Chooks. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. So we take a break. Good Morning Nigeria continues. Stay with us. You're welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. Before we begin a review of COP28 Climate Summit, let's take this background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
COP28 was another time for world leaders to once again come together to deliberate on global climate change. Delegates from over 200 countries were present at the conference, which took place in Dubai, with a focus on fossil fuels and finance. One major take-home at this year's meeting is nearly every country in the world agreeing to transitioning away from fossil fuels. It is expected that turning it into real-world decarbonization will require support from all industries, including finance and investments. Other key takeaways from COP28 include the commitment by countries to triple renewable energy supplies by 2023, double energy efficiency, set new national action plans by 2025, and a commitment to achieve zero carbon emissions by 2050, as well as the pledging of $700 million to a loss and damage fund designed to aid poor countries that are disproportionately affected by climate change. For Nigeria, it's an opportunity for President Bola Tinubu not just to market the potentials of his country, but also to reaffirm Nigeria's commitment towards global warming. The president argued that the developed world needs to understand the predicament of the developing countries, particularly Africa, who contribute the least to carbon emissions but suffer the most, and are now being asked to give up their major sources of livelihood in the name of climate change. He said Nigeria and Africa need understanding and support for energy transition. The Nigerian leader also said Africa must not become a victim of the disruptions that come with climate mitigative measures, while also stating that risk management is vital for Africa's full and swift transition to cleaner energy. On the sideline, Nigeria and Germany signed a performance agreement on the implementation of the Presidential Power Initiative to improve Nigeria's electricity supply. Also, President Tinubu hosted a high-level meeting with stakeholders and investors on the Nigerian carbon market and the electric buses rollout program. He unveiled the Nigeria Carbon Market Activation Plan. And also part of the gains include NNPC selling 2 deals to commercialize the country's liquefied natural gas for domestic and international markets in order to ensure Nigeria earns the much-needed revenue from its abundant gas assets. Now, COP28 could be said to have come and gone, with consensus reached. Now, how much will these countries implement the agreements? Will Africa indeed this time around breathe a fresh air as countries act on their commitments to decarbonization? These are some questions guests already seated will be answering shortly.
all right, many thanks for that background report, Oyeyemi Ajayi. Joining us right now for the conversation is the Director General and CEO, Energy Commission of Nigeria, ACN, Dr. Mustafa Abdullahi. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we have other guests who would join us in the course of the program.
Well, yes, you're correct, Henry. We have other guests that we're expecting. Honorable Samuel Onuigbo, former member of the House of Representatives and sponsor of Nigeria's Climate Change Act and Southeast representative on the board. And also, we also expect from our Kaduna studio, Awal Farouk Abdusalam, Professor of Applied Climatology Meteorology, Kaduna State University. But while we wait for them, we should just kickstart our conversation this morning with the DG, Dr. Mustafa. At the COP28, Nigeria recorded many positives, which include the appointment of a Nigerian, that is Tariye Gbadigesin, as CEO of Climate Investment Fund. From your own perspective, what do you think is the most remarkable, achievement that Nigeria recorded at the summit?
Thank you very much for having me once again. I was at the COP from the beginning of the conference. So I happened to, in fact, fortunately, I was part of the delegation that attended plenary. So I saw firsthand the commitments of countries and all the reports submitted for what we have done from the COP1, beginning of COP till date. So the biggest achievement for me, for Nigeria and for Africa at large, is I think the further commitment for climate financing.
Okay.
Because one of the major issues and what we took to COP as our complaint was the fact that we've not been able to enhance or the $100 billion we've always seen in the headlines or in all the COP, the commitments the developed countries have made to the climate mitigation. We've not been able to get a reasonable amount of that. And that was, we got some commitments from the developed countries. In fact, they've actually doubled their amount. And they've given us the templates. And just like you said, they appointed one of our own as well to champion that in Africa. So I believe that's one of our major strides at the COP28.
Talking about that appointment, how is that going to affect us in this country?
It gets us closer to the fund. Because for us to achieve what we have already made commitments of, what we've pledged to. We've pledged at the COP to triple our renewable generation, energy generation in the country. We've also pledged to double our energy efficiency. For us in Energy Commission, we have a major role to play as a policymakers and also implementers and strategic thinkers and advisors of the government in areas of energy. We are to develop master plans to achieve those commitments that the government has laid down. For us to do that in the area of energy, you require huge amounts. In fact, from our assessment, we will require $4 billion in a year for us to meet that target of doubling renewable energy, getting our, at least 20-25% every year of our electricity generation to be renewable. Then we would require that amount. We have tried in many ways to apply for funds, green funding, bonds, but nothing has come because we don't have that leverage, that connection with those people. We don't even know what they want. We've always had, there are funds, there is, you could apply for, for carbon credits, you can, but all we've always done is to put ourselves forward, submit concepts. At the end of the day, we don't see anything. So this appointment in particular, because he's our own, if he's rich, is somebody we know, somebody we could just call and say, how do we apply for this fund? So we believe that this fund is actually just around the corner. All we need to do is just to give him a call and we will get all the templates and concepts ready now to apply. So that's a good stride.
Yes, still talking about that fund, because some of the participants or the experts that attended this summit actually complained that it was far below the expectation. Like they were actually expecting nothing less than 11 billion upward, but unfortunately the fund realized was just about $3 billion and most of the countries, the developed countries that you would expect that will chip in more, we're not able to do that. What's your take on that?
For me, if you ask me, I think we have to develop our country. If you ask me, I think we have to look inward. This commitment started, I think, in 2017 in the COP, where we had $100 billion. And we started celebrating. I think Nigeria even committed to, further come back home and, in fact, have about 10,000 megawatts. We were just talking about what plants that we're going to do in some areas of renewable. We started research in wind energy, looking at nuclear. But at the end of the day, everything just ended in research. No pilot, because no funds to develop this, because we were relying on this foreign funds coming in. I think we have to look inward. The government needs to look at financing or maybe developing some financial concept in funding its green energy drive, because it's pledge. I mean, these figures are just...
they may not be redeemed.
It's just a pledge. Countries' pledges to do. They also have their own challenge. I mean, the major emitters of the green house, it's America. So they expect to bring, if you look at the documents and their CDC, so it's they have a lot to do in-house. So how do you expect them to bring this money to Africa? For me, I think our closest to that fund is the African Development Bank and some other financiers that we have in-house. But looking at that global pledge, the 3 billion, and I don't see it coming. So if you're saying that is even too little, I think we should embrace and try to even get that 3 billion, then utilize it and get appropriated funds for this, because renewable energy is an investment. It's the safest and also the cheapest, the most affordable energy we can think of. So if we invest in it, then we're saving money in our national purse. So I don't think we should have some over-reliance on that.
On the fund.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Abdullahi. We have joining us now from Kaduna, Awal Farouk Abdul Salam, Professor of Applied Climatology and Meteorology. He's from the Kaduna State University. Glad to have you on the program, Prof. Prof, can you hear me?
92.
All right, I think we'll fix that and get back to Prof as soon as he's ready. So, Dr. Abdullahi, we'll stay with you. You already talked about, the loss and damage fund and, why Nigeria should not, be dependent on that and looking at other ways. So, if, you were to give your own, advice as regards that looking inward, because this is a big deal, because 95% of Nigeria's foreign exchange earnings is from oil. And looking at what happened at the closing of COP28, the signing of a deal to transition away from oil and gas and coal in what the text called just, orderly and equitable manner. If we are to go by this, resolution reached at COP28, and you saying we should look inward, what other things do you think Nigeria should be looking at in order to move away from fossil fuel?
Yeah, so the beauty of it is the word transition there. So they're not saying you should move from fossil fuels and just within a day move to renewable, so cleaner source. They're saying transition, and luckily we were from the Energy Commission perspective, we're part of the crafters of the energy transition documents for the country. And what we have there is using the funds generated from the fossil fuel, the production, the crude oil we produce, and from gas, and directly channeling it into investments, clean economy investment. And how do we intend to do that? Because that is the key thing. We are producing crude oil, and we are emitting this greenhouse gases that is causing the climate change we're seeing, and it's affecting lives. So we believe that we can adapt to that, because that's our major source of fund. We can't move away from that. And I actually supported the OPEC when they resisted that document there when it was given to them to review. They resisted in COP, and at the end of the day, COP is to commit, so they signed that document. But for us as oil producing state or major oil producing country, I think we can keep producing safely. Nigeria have taken a major step in curbing the gas flare by the gas commercialization bid. I think they did a bid round about a year ago. So it means that during production, any gas that has been flared will be trapped. So that's a major mitigant for flaring. One thing we must do is the fund coming from that production or from the gas or from the crude that we must think the government must, because we've committed already, we've signed documents to triple our renewable generation. So that means there's no going back, because we've pledged in areas of clean cooling, we've pledged in fact, climate adaptation, we've pledged in, areas of, in fact, even in funding, countries has pledged to finance most of the renewable energy generation, not to even look at. I recall that the document, the president, because we were also part of the people that reviewed it, we've made commitments to put some figures down, appropriated, for this. So the only way forward for me is to look at how we can produce some certain amount of money when we sell our crude oil, take it directly into investment in the clean energy. And how do we do that? You talked about over-reliance in our dollar. Our money is crashing. All we need to do as Energy Commission, we are researchers. We have so many pilots research. We've done so many pilot developments there that is waiting. It will interest you to note that the REA and other agencies, sister agencies, usually purchases above, if not about 500 solar panels. We don't produce solar panels in the country, so that means we have to use dollar to do this. So what I'm saying is, if we're properly empowered in the Energy Commission, using this money from the fossil fuel that we're producing, we will be able to set up plants, factories here that will produce these solar panels and even batteries. Because the best batteries we have in Nigeria today is lithium battery. We have lithium in abundance, we have the raw materials in Nasarawa. So all we need is that fund. And we've actually applied for that fund through our act. We've gone for amendments, and one of the things we're demanding for is 1% of that money they remit to Federation account. Okay. And we've also stated clearly how we'll be able to translate that 1% into factories so that we can produce the lithium batteries and solar panels and all the value chain along the renewable energy drive. So if we're given that opportunity, I can guarantee you that we will not need to buy any components outside the country. Okay. We will be producing our solar panels here, our windmills here. We will be producing even the batteries, even inverters. We have the capacity. We have 6 centers. Energy Commission has 6 centers in the country that have done so many patented research. We've even developed some pilot stage factories for solar panels, but just in a marginal. So we just need to upscale. We need this fund to upscale. So I'm just pleading with the government to look inward. If that act is passed, if that amendment is passed in the National Assembly and the President assent to it, I can guarantee you we don't need that fund you're talking about. We will do it for ourselves, and we'll be generating clean energy from the country. So you're very
positive that we can raise the fund internally?
Yes, we can. We have crude oil. We have money coming from crude oil. If we're producing 1.6 million barrels, average, crude oil is being sold an average of $80 or $76. So do the math. All we need is 1% of that. To set up a solar panel factory in the country, you only require about 600,000 pounds. Okay. In dollars, you require about 800,000. Okay. And we have the technical know-how, the operators on ground. we have even partners that are ready to even bring some equitable amounts on ground. So all we need, like I said, is just that act to be passed, and we will get to where we want to be.
All right.
All right. While you were talking, Dr. Abdullahi, we had joining us Honorable Samuel Onwigbo, the former member of the House of Representatives and sponsor of Nigeria's Climate Change Act and Southeast representative on the board of Northeast Development Commission. Welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, viewers.
All right. So before we get to you, Honorable Samuel Onwigbo, to hear your thoughts about COP28 and the impact for us right here in the country, let's go back to Kaduna, where Awal Farouk Abdusalam, Professor of Applied Climatology and Meteorology, is standing by to respond to some questions. Prof, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. And good morning to you.
All right, welcome to the program, Prof. So I'm sure that you have followed a bit of the program, and you listened to Dr. Abdullahi talk about some of the takeaways from COP28 and what we can do in our country to be able to, transition from fossil fuel. And he made mention of the fact that, well, if we can actually develop right here in Nigeria, and then look away from the loss and damage fund, look away from developed world trying to assist us, we could do a lot of things and then move to a greener economy. But I'd like to hear your thoughts, Professor, because I'm sure you followed COP28. You know some of the takeaways and some of the deals that have been signed, and you also know what a loss and damage fund is all about and where we are at the moment. So for you, what would you say is the major breakthrough for Nigeria, from COP28?
Sincerely, if we are going to be fair to Nigerians and fair to Africans in particular, we can say the takeaway is little or none. Of course, facts have been reached. Strong languages are being used, like transitioning away from the fossil fuel. But the reality is, a country like Nigeria and other developing countries that have little contribution to the quagmire or to the climate crisis we are in cannot just easily, transition away from the fossil fuel. Look, Nigerian economy, we can say 95%, that's what the statistic is saying from the National Bureau of Statistics, of our foreign earning is on fossil fuel. And we need huge funding, just as the president made mention, we need huge funding to succeed in this transition. Annually, Nigeria needs about 10 billion US dollar to, work within the framework of this transitioning from now to 2060. So, coming back to what I have started saying, to me, it's business as usual. Negotiations, resolutions, and where the issue is the implementation. Just like what the president of the COP28 says, we are what we do, not what we say. That is exactly the phrase he used, meaning that the implementation of the pact or of the resolution reached is what is important. And sincerely speaking, if we are going, like I said, to be fair to us and other countries, we are not ready to move away completely or even slowly from the fossil fuel, because our economy, our life ties with it. In Nigeria and other developing countries, I think what we should be facing is the issue of how can we adapt. Sincerely, we are not the culprit, but the impact and the pain is going to be more here. So our experts, our policy makers, our government should focus on how are we going to deal with this crisis. It's already there. We've already passed the threshold. Any climate scientist is going to speak, truly will tell you that we've already passed the threshold, and the warming is going to continue. Even if from today all emissions stop, the warming will continue until the end of the century. So in excess, what I'm saying is we should just look inward, and even if there is any external intervention that will come, should come in form of technology, should come in form of funding, now we can, yes, participate in the issue of moving away from fossil fuel.
Thank you, Professor, for your contribution there. Professor has raised some issues there, which is very vital. The fact that it's not just about the resolution, it's the implementation that actually it's more important now. And also that Nigeria cannot actually easily transit, because we depend more on the fossil fuel right now. And I know that at the summit, majority of the OPEC members too, they are totally in the same line. Now, I want your own perspective on that. And also, some people have described that the outing of Nigeria this time around is the best so far, because the president himself led the delegation and he was able to make a lot of, agreements, sign a lot of agreement with countries, for the development of the country. So how would you describe our outing, this time around, and given the fact that it was led by the president?
Thank you very much indeed for asking this very important question. Well, in my personal view, my humble opinion, our outing was very successful. And I'm saying this without really mincing words. The fact is that I've been attending COP meetings since 2015, from COP28. And I know that from then, when I started the process of sponsoring the bill on climate change, until it was passed and assented to by the former president, this outing is one of the most successful. I said this because the provisions of the bill, of the act, are clear on who leads anything now concerning climate change. And that person who is in charge in the driver's seat is the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He is the chairman of the National Council on Climate Change, which is the main body that is charged or saddled with the responsibility of overseeing everything about climate change in the country. And therefore, the president set the pace and the tone of how he wanted this COP to go. And I think he deserves some commendation. Because, one, he was able to tell his appointees, ministers, DGs, and all that we're going to this COP to achieve results for Nigeria. When he told them that, some of us were not privy to that. But we became aware of that when he went to the National Assembly and read the budget speech. And in his budget speech in paragraphs 23, 24, 25, he was explicit about how he would like them to, in fact, he said, I have directed. And he did not stop there. He concluded by saying that together we will go there and get things for Nigeria. So why I say he deserves commendation is that he was able to lead. And you know that climate change is cross-cutting. It's not something that is limited to Ministry of Environment or Ministry of Petroleum or Water Resources and all that. So he led them and they came. I will tell you that I saw a roster assigning ministers, DGs to where to go and represent the country. Why he himself took charge. I was lucky to attend at least 4 meetings with him. So this COP is a different COP. And this COP has come with some results. And some of those results have already started trickling in, and some of them are coming. And because it was one COP that you saw the involvement of almost all concerned, I listened to the speech by one of the high-level persons, His Excellency, I think, Admiral, also, where he talked that this is COPs of inclusivity.
Yeah.
Because it cuts across the federal government. I saw so many state governors with their team,
state government,
ministers. In fact, by the provisions of the Act, the federal government, the governors, the local government, the private sector, then the women, the youths, and people with disabilities. It cuts across. And the reason why I say this is because, you know, Africa or Nigeria, let me use Nigeria in particular, is a nation of very young people. So when we're making the bill to make it an act, we recognize that with these young people, you gather momentum, and that's precisely what this gentleman said. So we made successful impact, and a lot of that credit goes almost up.
Is there some of the results have started trickling in? Can you?
One, you notice that even before going to the COPs, when Mr. President went for the G20, that's where we signed an agreement with the Germans to use flared gas, or gas that's supposed to be flared, to generate. Gas is supposed to be, shipped to Europe and all that. That's a major achievement, and that's the value of that is about $500 or so million. In addition, the agreement with the Siemens was also signed. I'm talking about government to government level. And then you go on and saw that Mr. President also activated the carbon market aspect of the act. Joining Africa in what they want to do. Because right there at the COPs, he appointed the chairman of FIRS, Zach Adedej, to join the DG of the National Council on Climate Change, Dr. Salisu Dahiru, for them to activate that section of the Act, which is Section 4, subsection I of the Act, that talks about these two agencies working together to work on carbon. I know that going forward, we will also activate Section 4, subsection J, which talks about emissions trading. So actions he has taken, and how he was able to draw this roster and followed up and attended these high-level meetings himself. I went with him to Nigerian Pavilion to charge them, to give them a sense of belonging. He was all over the place. So for me, that's very important. Now, if you are talking about what we are doing about transitioning,
yeah,
and all that, it's very clear. Just go back and take a record of what the Chinese have done. I think in 2022, they produced about 4.4 million transport vehicles only for their country. I think the following year or so, they produced 5.9. This is one of our major markets. The Chinese buy a lot of oil from us. The same thing is going on in the United States, that transitioning. It's happening in India. In the case of India, their renewable energy grew about 396 or so % within a short period. The same thing is happening in Europe. If you go to Germany now and take percentage of what renewable energy is contributing to their power supply, you see that it has increased. I was with a lot of Germans in some of the meetings that I attended. Last time I was with them, it was about 40. The next time, it was 50-something. Now it is pushing close to 60. What does this mean? That's German out of the rest of the European Union. These are your buyers. And they're working on how to transition out of fossil fuel. So if you fail to plan, then it means you are planning to fail. Because when I was at the Scottish Parliament, we had an event in 2021, before this act was passed. We had an event and I spoke and I told them, we are looking for people to come in and partner with us and take advantage of massive market that we have in the country and on the continent. But that we want to transition and hit net zero. But we do not want to transition into crisis. And what that means is that we are beginning to plan. And that's why even in a recent article I wrote, I talked about why we should begin to plan the transition. I'm happy seeing the DG of Energy Commission and some of the things he has said. It means we have to begin to work. Because if these major markets move away, they are moving. Who are going to be your buyers? So that's why it is important. Yes, we don't emit much. Africa's contribution, continental contribution, is less than 4%, it's about 3 point something. We know those who are emitters, but the same emitters are working very fast. I have a colleague who went to China, and he went to different factories in 15 provinces. I saw in some of the factories are producing about 1,000 cars a day. Anything on electric vehicles, those who are paying attention, they know that they have moved very fast. So we have a duty as a people, as a nation. That's why if you read Mr. President's speech, one, apart from the statement that was given, but he just wrote a piece on that was published by CNN. He said, yes, we are not going to go on this journey alone. We need resources, whether from the Build Back policy of the United States or what the Europeans are doing. We need, because we have committed to moving. He even cited the Climate Change Act, where we said that we're going to transit and try and hit net zero between 2050 to 2070.
Okay, Honorable Onwigbo, you have talked about planning, and Dr. Abdullahi, while speaking, was talking about what the Energy Commission can do, having to make batteries, lithium batteries and solar panels and all of that. But my thoughts now are not just about, transitioning to green energy. The fact that our major earnings in this country, our foreign exchange earnings are from oil. And if we can no longer sell oil, what are we going to be selling to the rest of the world to be able to generate revenue? I mean, it's beyond us just, having to use fossil carbon here in the country. It's now generating income to be able to do other things. Yeah. What are the things, you're talking about planning. What should we be looking at as, a major foreign exchange earning for us beyond oil?
Okay. I'm going to answer your question just using an example. The question is, what are we going to be doing? What are we going to be using to raise, this is a blessed nation with massive human, mineral, and other resources. So, all I believe Mr. President is doing, along with his team now, is that to get us ready to use human. We had what he was talking about in Nasarawa. We have lithium we can use to do battery. These things are in so many places. It's just for a leader to drive it and say, this is where we're going. Do you know why I'm saying that? When we were trying to move away from, our usual, the old phone, landline and all that, and the night, it seemed impossible. And I've cited this instance at different fora. It just seemed impossible that, oh, no, how is this going to be possible? With 90 people putting the ID card here, and acting big. But in less than 5 years, it was a different scenario. You know how much all these telecommunication companies are making. So I've made the point. We have very young population. We have people who are raring to go. And it's important for us to activate this fully, as Mr. President is doing, so that we begin to generate. We can generate enough resources here. We can also get resources from outside. That's why everybody's talking about the impact of this COP. We will not, because we are not sure what we are going to say, fail now to begin. Because I have cited instance. If you do not have these buyers, what are you going to do? Are we now going to stay and say, okay, we don't have buyers, we are not going to do anything? We have now to begin to lay out how we are going to rescue ourselves.
I asked you that question, Honorable Onwigbo, because, before oil, agriculture was a major earner for Nigeria, foreign exchange earnings for Nigeria. But agriculture is vulnerable to climate change, and we know that. We're beginning to see that. It's affecting a lot of things as far as agriculture is concerned. And we're not looking at adaptation just so that we can solve that problem, as far as agriculture is concerned. So, Dr. Abdullahi, I'm sure you want to respond at this point.
Yes, let me just add to what he has spoken about options if there's no fossil fuel. I think we are already committed to phase out fossil fuel.
Okay.
Because the regulators and the producers, the NNPC, have already developed a concept in doing that, and they are doing that already. There's what they call aggressive exploration and production in the oil industry, and which they have embarked on already. There's a directive that it's a global directive, but we've embraced it in the country to go into aggressive, generation of what we have in our reservoirs, because if it's there, we believe
it will be useless after a while.
To get to a point where you won't be able to use it. Nobody buys and all that. So it's just a reality that we have to face. We are already doing that aggressive exploration already. In fact, I think the NNPC and the DPR, the former DPR, which is the NUPRC now, are beginning to give regulations and sanctions the operators that have oil wells and blocks there and are just lying fallow. Because we have this thing, and we believe we've been too slow in production. Maybe if we're producing this oil, we won't even have, we'll just have option. We'll be talking about clean economy right now. And clean economy will bring more money. Because everybody is moving towards the clean economy, the green economy. If everybody is going towards renewable energy, and we are going to be producing the lithium batteries and the solar cells, the panels, the converters and all that, because we have the natural resources in-house. That means we're going into business as well. And we're going to be saving more money, because the money we're making from this fossil fuel is going into our gas. Our electricity is generated mostly by gas. So we're wasting, we believe we're going to be saving more billions of dollars from this transition. It's a reality that is already here. We've already pledged, we've signed documents to implement that, and we have master plan for that. The NCCC, in fact, we were part of the people that drafted that master plan because our inputs were actually sorted.
Okay.
So we have a plan to transit. It's not an option. We've already committed. The president has spoken, and the only thing he's bargaining and his only request is that come to our aid, and we've gotten answers as well. Because I recall the presidency in the COP, the president of COP stated clearly that one of the themes of this COP28 is not to leave anybody, not to carry everybody along and not to leave anybody behind. So, which is very, very key to Africans, to us. Because if we are to move on the same pace with China and America, that is what we want to hear. We are going to have so many. You talked about agriculture. The emissions is affecting, the climate change is affecting our, because of drought and all that. So adaptation, we are doing well, but we have to mitigate that. So we have to stop the emission. We have to go into natural. If we stop it and we go into agriculture, we will.
But you heard Professor talking about the emissions, and he's saying Nigeria is not contributing so much to the emission. No, I think it's about 0.04%, and the whole of Africa, it's
a climate, the global emission. It's emission is in the climate. There's nothing that holds any emission from America from not being affecting. It's a global phenomenon, so it's something that we need to tackle together. So we're not trapping just the emission there. It's a global, even if you stop your emission and America is doing it, it might have an effect.
That's what Professor was trying to say. Now, the thing is, the emission, like we know, is coming from the developed world. The effect that we'll see globally is more from the activities from the developed world and not necessarily what Nigeria is doing or Africa is doing. So, is there a need to, hurriedly join them in stopping the emissions, considering the fact that what we are contributing to the global effect is very minimal?
I don't think we're in a hurry. 2060. 2050, those are the targets.
But if you compare our economies, do you think we're going to get there within that period?
We have a master plan. We have a plan. We have documents. We have policy documents that will get us there. without harming anybody.
Policy document is just paper. How do you translate that to reality?
That is why we have agencies to implement. That is why I've just given you that all we need is just the president to support us.
But what about the funds? You'd already mentioned that. That would be an issue.
The funds are there from the crude oil we're selling.
So you think, because the president said we'll need $10 billion every year until 2060 to be able to achieve the transition plan we're talking about here. So do you really think that
we can do it? Okay. In the COP, he will agree with me that they are finance, what they call that booth. We have an area where it's just about finance. You see the World Bank, African Development Bank, all the IFC, all the finance, the big shots are there. And they spoke to us. I was part of some session that we had about financing, and all they are demanding for is for us to put something on the table. In particular, Energy Commission have met so many partners that are ready to do things, but they will not just do it without the enabling environment. They want to see that you are even ready. You're ready to embrace this that the world is bringing.
Okay.
And also in terms of funding, there's usually what they call a seed fund. There's usually a 10% or 5% of that global amount that you have to commit before they will now release all that. And those are the figures, the few figures that we need, not the $10 billion.
Okay.
That's why I said over-relying on that fund will really not take us anywhere. We'll have to appropriate. We need to, the government needs to,
look inward.
Yeah, you can see the budget submitted. I mean, we have to, also scrutinize that budget and see how much is going to the energy agencies.
Okay.
We need to also be able to channel some into this. Right. Because all the chunk of money is going into power, works, and all that. But the global effect is affecting their work there. So you need to tackle this climate change before you can even get it right in other sectors.
Okay.
So there's a bit of, redirection of funds. I think,
okay, thank you, DG, for your contribution there. But we want to go to we'll come back to you, Honorable. But let's go to our Kaduna studio where Prof is still there with us. Prof, you have listened to the conversation here in the studio, and from all that our guests have said, there is no going back on this transitioning. So Nigeria, we just have to join the rest of the world and move with the world. We cannot be left behind. And the issue right now is how do we collaborate, with other developed, countries, especially in the area of knowledge transfer and technology, which is very vital, for these transitioning. And also, you talked about the issue of how can we adapt to the climate crisis, which is also vital. I want you to address, and how can we address that challenge, especially faced by the vulnerable communities in the country, adapting to climate impact, particularly in the agricultural sector.
For bringing me back to this very important discussion. There are two part of the question. The first one is the issue of how do we collaborate with the international Committee of Nations to transition away. Yes, we can do that. Of course, we cannot be a pariah state, but the reality always is the reality. Funding is the major issue. Technology transfer and other things are secondary, but funding is the major issue. And the reality is that we have crisis of funds in the country. This is everybody knows this. We can't hide. But there is one very good dimension that the South African leader during the UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly 78, brought to the table, which I think is an area we can explore, because the $100 billion green funding that is there is difficult. It has proven to be very difficult to access. He brought the issue of debt relief. Most of these, the emitters, the countries that control the economy are the one providing this funding, and they are the one that we are indebted to. So this can come in form of debt relief, which will be which will have a very huge impact on our economy to have our debt waived. Secondly, is the issue of the adaptation, the second part of the question. Like I said, definitely we just need to look inward. Go back to our research institutes, especially the area of agric. You talk about vulnerability of agriculture, which is very sensitive to the issue of climate change, the issue of health, the issue of water resources, and have developed our indigenous adaptation, indigenous local adaptation method, which we can do. Our research institute in agric sector can come up with seeds and varieties of seeds that can withstand what we are facing. The issue of water resources as well, and the issue of health, which is also very important. So it's just to activate our research community to do the research, and also our policy makers to be ready to adopt these researches and implement.
Professor, I'll get to Honorable Onwigbo now. You heard Professor about, the adaptation and what Nigeria can do. You already mentioned, looking inwards in so many aspects. Yes, I agree that we must look inwards. But you see, some people have also raised the question about decarbonizing oil and gas, if that's not a way out of this whole climate chaos. Honorable Onwigbo, why is decarbonizing oil and gas so they can become cleaner fuels not an option, especially for African countries as a way out of this?
No, before coming there, I would like to address the issue, because you raised the question that since Nigeria, Africa is contributing so small, about 3% or so, why are we worried? Why don't we have... we should ask the other question. We've not been contributing to emissions, but we are feeling the impact all over. We're feeling the impact, whether you're coming from the northern part of the country, where the areas have dried up, and you see Lake Chad drying up to almost 90% or more from the recent studies. And then you see the gully erosions that were never there, then coastal erosions, the way they were never there, taking away communities like Hayetura and some other communities around rivers and Bayelsa, and even up to Lagos. So it means we are feeling the impact without contributing. So what the world is saying is that we must join hands to stop the emissions so as to reduce, because we are more vulnerable. We are not prepared, for tackling the enormity of the problems coming from climate change. So the best thing is for us to join hands and make sure that we push for keeping this thing below 2 degrees or attempting to attain 1.5 degrees, Celsius. That's about that. So we have to work. We don't have to wait. We have to go on and work, collaborate, and achieve. If we wait, it will probably be worse than what it is now. Now, no, there's nothing like not trying to get clean oil. In fact, if you read the speeches, including the one that Mr. President gave, we are working towards that. You recall that Mr. President was part of the high-level panel that committed themselves to removing methane from oil, processing and all that, and other non-CO2 gases. He was part of it, and he reiterated that in his piece, which he published which was published by CNN. So efforts are geared towards that side to make sure that we remove these poisonous gases from oil and gas. It's a major target, and it's one of the things that have been worked upon. You recall that even during the COP, we launched long-term low emissions, strategy by the National Council on Climate Change. In fact, it's a country policy. So we're working towards that. We're working towards decarbonization. It's a major policy area that the government is working towards. And of course, everything about having a green growth a sustainable growth is geared towards that. And of course, that's even the summary of what the Climate Change Act is all about. If you go to Section 1 of that act, it talks about having a green and sustainable growth and ensuring that climate change is mainstreamed into national development priorities. So that's the bottom line. Everything about removal of greenhouse gases, that's the bottom line. And to the glory of God, one of the things actually I did not address initially, apart from acknowledge Mr. President and how he was able to set the pace and the tone, is that this COP has created massive awareness, at least for the Nigerian nation. It was never like this before. I remember when I was appointed to chair the House Committee on Climate Change in 2015, and I was calling meetings. It was a shock to me that even directors, some of the directors who were overseeing climate change issues, did not know so much about it. In fact, when I wrote to different MDAs for their input to help us prepare the bill, take into consideration different sectors and different concerns, I remember that a very senior director in one of the major, ministries that contributes or that is impacted by climate change, coming to my office. She's also a lawyer, and came there and questioned me what her ministry had to do with climate change. So that's not the case today. It has all changed. So
you would say that Nigeria played a very vital role in the negotiations and the climate change, a very proactive role in this last one.
We did, and I will also add something here. The 36th session, ordinary session of the AU, passed a resolution asking for Africa to hold a climate change summit, and also affirming that Kenya should host that. And by the grace of God, some of us were there.
Okay.
Nigeria.
We have to interject you now.
Okay.
The director is signaling that we should take a break.
Okay.
We'll take a break. The conversation continues. Stay with us. Yeah, welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. And we are still discussing the review of the COP28 Climate Summit in Saudi Arabia. We still have our guests with us, and before we went on the short break, we were having the Honorable speak to us. But we're going to go straight to our Kaduna studio, where we have Professor Awal in the studio, who has been speaking with us on this review of COP28. Now, Professor, I want us to talk on the issue of awareness and capacity building, taking advantage of the COP28 now. Do you think that with the resolution and also our participation, how do you think we can use what we have, the achievement recorded, to facilitate the development, our domestic policies, institutions, and capacity to tackle the climate change here in Nigeria? Taking advantage of the COP28 now, do you think that with the resolution and also our participation, how do you think we can use what we have? Hello, Professor, can you hear us? Hello, Professor. Okay, I think we're having audio challenge there. We'll come back to the studio. Maybe we'll just... All
right, so Dr. Abdullahi, you want to respond to that question?
Yes, okay.
The Energy Commission of Nigeria has 16 centers.
Okay.
Yeah, we have majorly 6 also centers along the institutions.
Okay.
So we are also researchers.
Okay, fine.
We have energy centers that do research in terms of development of all the components, energy components for sources production and also for generation of energy. So for me, I think the Energy Commission came back from COP and started, we've hit the ground running already in terms of awareness. And what we are doing is that we've had some proposals, budget proposals, our ELGP, we've We have some components, some proposal we've made, if been at least approved by the National Assembly, which in the Assembly today. We intend to go along each geopolitical zone, using our centers, our professors in the centers, to kind of organize workshops and seminars for the people in the rural areas, in the grassroots, telling them more about the effects and also the mitigants that we have for the climate change. So we have that plan. We also have, in fact, plan in deployment of technology, because there's something we've actually created, which is a technology and energy commission called Energy Calculator, that calculates the emission. It's a very novel technology that was created. It was done alongside UNIDO. We got some funding from UNIDO last year, and we were able to develop a component called Energy Calculator that will tell you the emission in every area. So we intend to deploy that free of charge for all these communities, and also train them in how they can use it and where they will alert, because we'll give them a platform where they will tell us this is what is going on. And also because one of our mandates is also to advise source of energy to be used and to mitigate the climate, what is contributing to that. If it's flare, is it whatever is contributing to that, we'll be able to advise further. So we have that plan already, and hopefully by January or February, whenever the budget is passed, we're going to mobilize our professors and doctors, our experts, to this community and train them into using the energy calculator, knowing what the environment is all about.
Brilliant. Brilliant, Dr. Abdullahi. Of course, we're looking forward to that. That would do a lot of good, and will help us to monitor what exactly is happening. Even as you have mentioned, there will be more drilling going on now, just so that we can get more oil out of the ground and all of that. Okay. Honorable Onwigbo, now I'll get to you, and I like you because you talked about Nigeria participating better this year than previous COPs, and yes, there was so much comments about the number of Nigerian delegates at the conference. Of course, the federal government came out to clear the air, saying just a few were actually sponsored by the government, but back home some people felt it was just a jamboree for Nigerians, and they were not there for serious business. But from what you have said, it's serious business having the president on ground. So could you tell us specifically about some of the achievements, from the meetings that the president, had himself? We know that he met with King Charles as well as the president of the UAE. Could you give us specifics, of those engagements, what, we stand to gain?
Well, first is to say that I was coming from the angle of the Africa Union, during the 36th ordinary session, passing a resolution saying we must have Africa Climate Summit. And they also affirmed that Kenya should host that. And that's what happened in September, early September, September 4th, 5th, 6th. Like I said, I was lucky to be at the Kenya National Parliament for the ones talking on renewable energy and how to upscale. Now, what the African Union did under the leadership of the presidents and heads of states during that summit, in addition to people from different international multilateral financial agencies and some regional bodies like ECOWAS, was to say these are our concerns as Africans. These are issues that we would like to be addressed during COP28. And these resolutions, of which Nigeria was part of, were what formed what our African group of negotiators used to press our case. And that's why when you saw the first text that came out by the presidents of COP28, there was reaction from African group of negotiators led by Honorable Collins Mzowi from Zambia. And the second text, and that second text captured a lot of things that we have had concerns about, like global goal and adaptation that we started talking about since 2013 up to 2015. A committee was set between then and when we went for Glasgow. There wasn't much achieved until a specific committee was set up to work between Glasgow and Sharm el-Sheikh. And that's the outcome. And today we're happy that for the first time that has entered as part of it. It's an achievement, not just for the continent alone, also for Nigeria, because we're going to be beneficiary of it. Now, you go further to check the issue of operationalization of a loss and damage, which again was a product of a combined effort of developing countries, you know, in COP27 in Egypt, bringing it up from part of it, from it being part of the Paris Agreement, but it was almost dormant there until it was brought up by the Dreaming Nations, and we pushed for it. We got it on the table, had a resolution, and then by COP28, it was operationalized. These are achievements. Then if you come to what Mr. President was able to do, Mr. President was able to participate, one, in his person. You've mentioned King Charles. He met with King Charles before, and then he met with some other global leaders on climate change. John Kerry, the Chinese climate envoy, the United Nations group, and all that. And then plus the president of COP at different meetings. One was when we were talking about renewable, you know, tripling renewable energy. The one on May 10, and the one where, you know, the president of Kenya, Williams Ruto, publicly acknowledged the decisions that he has taken as a president that provides a pathway on leadership for other Africans. Because these decisions are hard now, but they are definitely going to bear fruits down the line. It was also at the Nigerian pavilion where, like I said before, where he came and then, you know, boosted their morale, and several other meetings. He was there when we were supposed to give statements. He was there in person. It's just that the thing was taking too long that day until, you know, we closed and we left. So it's obvious that he was actively engaged and involved, and his participation, which I have described as successful, you know, and motivating in nature, has comprehensively activated the Climate Change Act to convey to people. My brother DDG was talking about what they plan to do, same professors to go to the geopolitical zones. If you check how we have the structure, the federal government, the president, the chairman of the Governors Forum, bringing in the subnationals, the president of the Association of Local Governments, and then you go to the private sector, you talk about the youth, the women, and people with disabilities. You now discover that this is a little bit comprehensive. So with Mr. President driving, I have no doubt whatsoever that this positive effect from COP, the momentum of the young people being in COP, and again, you talked about the number of persons who were in COP and all that. It was partly due to people not having enough information about who was sponsored by who. Because a lot of those young people were sponsored by international organizations, NGOs, and all that. Of course, we had the government saying this number was sponsored.
422.
Good, 422. Then subtracted from 1,411. You discover, you ask yourself, the other people were sponsored by, not by the government, by international.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable, for reeling out the various positives that at least Nigeria, you know, derive from the conference.
But there are many
yes, I know. And the role that the president, as the chief negotiator, you know, played in the summit, which is highly commendable. Now let's go back to Kaduna studio where we have Prof. Prof, you have listened to some of the positives that Nigeria recorded at the climate summit, just concluded climate summit. Now we're looking at how can we translate these into, you know, facilitating policy development for, you know, in Nigeria. I mean, we're looking at awareness and capacity building. Because earlier on you talked about the issue of implementation, which is also a major challenge. You know, we have big resolutions, big ideas, but implementation has always been our challenge. Now, how do we? Someone actually has proposed that there should be an institution. We should create an institution to be able to, you know, implement properly all these resolutions, one. Then two, how do we translate this to, you know, making policies for our institutions, capacity building, and also to educate, our communities?
Well, thank you. I think to the best of my understanding, we have very good framework, very good policies, and very intelligent, young people that are really into the issue of climate change. That we don't have a problem. I think my major concern is the sincerity and how far the government wants to go or needs to go in terms of the policy implementation. This is about 3 decades that Nigeria is participating fully in the COP discussion. The COP28 in Paris was a very big milestone to Glasgow, to Sharm el-Sheikh, to this. And all the resolutions are there. But if you ask the common man or the farmer in Soba, maybe here in Kaduna State, or the fisherman in Bayelsa that is losing his catches, what is going on? I'm telling you, and I'm telling Nigerians, that these people that are directly impacted are not even aware about the risks they are into. So, emphasis again is all our governments, through the beautiful policies and framework we have and the structure we have, should just be sincere in implementing these ideas, and especially the issue of information. And again, we need to institutionalize from, I think, our subnational government to national government, the issue of climate justice. Even in Nigeria, we have the same blanket. We are going to be affected by climate change, but it's not everybody that will feel the impact. So the people that are really going to feel the impact, the local farmers, the aged people, the vulnerable women and children, should be given priority in any policy implementation, should be given priority. And it's only then we will have the confidence to say that the outcome of these resolutions are working.
Sir Awal Farouk Abdusalam, thanks for your thoughts there. So I like the DG of the Energy Commission now, Dr. Abdullahi, also share his thoughts with us. What about rounding up the conversation? Going forward, you talked about what your commission, is planning to do. But what would you want the government to do? You just heard the concerns of Professor, and that's the reality on ground. Those who will be massively affected by all of these, know nothing about what's happening at the moment, and they may not be carried along if the right policies are not put in place. So in your own view, what really is the way out of this, just so that the whole transition, not just for the world, even for Nigeria, is also orderly and equitable?
Yeah, thank you very much again. So the transition document actually states all the plans for the government and the road map to be followed. And this is being crafted to be done equitably and also safely. And the climate, justice is just talked about here, as it's been considered as well. Actions have been taken already, not just policy documents. You are aware that the first marginal field, the gas commercialization has been concluded. That means very soon we'll have at least a reduced gas flare, which is contributing to the major, emissions. Yes, so if that has been done. Also, the Energy Commission is trying to collaborate with NMPC in areas of CCT, that's a carbon capture technology. Our researchers are looking deep into saving the environment by deploying technology to capture what has been flared to the air and all that. Now, in areas of policies are document that is being reviewed. Policies are reviewed. So the Energy Commission also, because our major mandate basically is to plan and develop policy of areas of energy, and that's what we do. We also monitor, obviously, the implementation of that policy. We intend, because COP actually has educated us a lot. We were there, and you see, I in particular, I have, yes, my mandate is for energy in all regional ramifications, but going to COP over time have really, really exposed me to knowing how to mitigate the climate change. Okay. And the commitments, Mr. President have, made commitments that we are bound. We don't need directive from him. We're there to actually take his speech and implement.
Okay, thank you very much, DG, for
that's a commitment from us.
For letting us know what you have gained from the climate summit. But your parting shot, Honorable, what do you think? What lessons can Nigeria learn from African countries that have made progress in this transitioning? In just 60 seconds.
Well, the lessons are there that are open. For instance, our own president was there when President Ruto talked about $4.4 billion in investments. And for those who were involved in the investments, he called each of them up and they were acknowledged, publicly. Then it means some people are making progress. And of course, you are aware that Kenya has gone very far on the issue of renewable energy.
Okay.
So we can, learn from them, just as they learn from us. For instance, our own Climate Change Act has been copied or, studied by different countries within the continent because they want to pattern it after our own. So on the issue of awareness, which we have talked about, that's why I said that this COP was just different. That aspect of inclusivity is very important because all the young people who came, women, the civil society organizations, and all that, they are the ones carrying the message. Then plus the governors and leadership of the local.
All right,
thank you very much, Honorable, for your thoughts there. Thank you so much. That's how far we can take from you today. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria, Honorable Samuel former member of the House of Representatives and sponsor Nigeria's Climate Change Act and Southeast representative on the board of Northeast Development Commission. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Also, we want to thank our DG, Dr. Mustafa Abdullahi, Director General, CEO, Energy Commission of Nigeria, ECN. Thanks for coming. And also in our Kaduna studio, we want to appreciate Professor Awal Farouk Abdusalam, Professor of Applied Climatology and Meteorology, Kaduna State University. Thank you very much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Next is foreign news.
Chadians vote on a new constitution in a key step towards elections promised but postponed by the ruling junta and seen as a test of legitimacy of the Derby dynasty's more than 30-year rule. Transitional President General Muhammad Idris Deby Itno, whose junta had governed since 2021, had promised to hand over to civilians and hold elections this year before postponing them to 2024. The yes vote is expected to win the constitutional referendum after a well-financed campaign by the ruling junta against a divided opposition, which has faced arrest, intimidation, and threats for more than a year. In the capital, Jamina, posters are splashed across walls in support of the proposed constitution, which calls for a unitary and decentralized state. United Nations says supporters of a federal state urge people in the Central African nation and the world's second least developed country to vote no. The two main opposition groups have urged a boycott of the vote, halt the referendum posters with a big red cross through them have appeared. But opponents are pinning their hopes on a low turnout, which they say would undermine the transitional president that has held absolute power in Chad for 33 years. The proposed constitution is not greatly different from the previous one, which concentrated significant powers in the hands of the head of state. A unitary state is the sole means of upholding unity, and the Yes campaign argues dismissing federalism as aiding separatism and chaos.
All right, that concludes Good Morning Nigeria today. Many thanks for being a part of it. Join us again tomorrow. I'm Ian Ray John.
And I am Ademola Adeoye. Thank you very much for watching. Do have a good day.